a nice salutation from a sleepy me. I haven't been sleeping well lately. That was probably a major part of why I was so grumpy in the last video. I haven't been sleeping good. And it's not, I haven't been on the beer or anything. I've been off the ale for a while now. I haven't stopped drinking completely. I fucking love beer. But a couple of times a year, I'll take a month or two of just not drinking anything. And I'm on the first month of that now, so I'll probably have the next drink the end of May or beginning of June. I just do it. I just like doing it. It just feels good. Uh, but I often wonder if people have a problem with alcohol. They would be better off. Well, I don't have a problem with alcohol. Like I could stop completely, and I have in the past. But people who do, and not just people who are alcoholics or stuff. Some people might have some people drink to gargle, and they get down, they get the blues. Just take a break every so often, and then enjoy it, and then you enjoy it more. It's like food, you know. I could eat Mexican food every night a week, or Italian food, or Indian food, but you don't enjoy it after the second or third night. So what you do is you eat regular food, and then you have it like once a month, and it becomes a treat, and therefore it becomes special, a festival. Speaking of festivals, it's April 30th today, Walpurgisnacht, Walpurgis, Guten Walpurgis, and a fascinating holiday. Not only is it the prequel before we go into Beltane, or Beltane, depending what dialect of Irish you speak, May 1st, May's Eve. But May's Eve now, perhaps the only Christian holiday that the pagans stole from the Christians and made their own, in the same way that they stole all our holidays and made. We at least we got one back. We got one back with Walpurgis. Saint Walpurga was a German saint and a martyr, and it was almost certainly the feast day, like Beltane tomorrow, was based on a pagan thing. So Ireland, nearly all of Ireland's bank holidays now are pagan. Isn't that amazing? And nearly every Celtic pagan festival in Ireland is a bank holiday, a government holiday in Ireland, which is nice to see. And so anyway, Imbolc is going to be will officially be a holiday, and it's just amazing, really. And so yeah, so what happened is like in places like Mount Brocken, the folk witches up in the Harz Mountains in northern Germany started to, in southern Germany, which tends to be more Catholic, they stuck more with the Samhain, Halloween type thing. So in the Odenwald, was in Lower Franconia, which is now part of Hesse, they still celebrate the Samhain is the most big thing there with the pagan community. But in the north of Germany, the big thing is now Walpurgis and April 30th. And it's interesting how the beginning of the year, in Easter in Sweden, that's the pagan holiday. That's a weird one. In Sweden, everyone dresses up as witches, you know that, or puts a witch in their front yard on on Easter. But that comes from an ancient pagan thing as well. Well, Ostara. But so the pagan, well, should we say they're Christians, but still continue to venerate parts of the old ways, used to gather in the Harz Mountains. And then rumors were circulated that these witches were flying to see the devil on their broomsticks. And so, in the same way that black people in America kind of took back the N-word by using it, the pagans, the sort of like folk pagans of northern Germany, took back the slander by owning it, and they made Walpurgisnacht, which absolutely was previously a pagan thing. As far as we know, there's no written documentation because the Lutherans had a scorched earth policy as far as folk paganism and stuff like that was concerned, but and even Catholicism. So Guten Walpurgis, and Shona Beltana tomorrow. So this is that's probably what it's probably that 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 when you get a bit tense right before Christmas, or or any kind of thing like that. But then when it happens, you feel a lot better. Well, I think a lot of that was going on with me yesterday. Plus the world is nuts. It's nice to see. Oh, I'm looking around. There's a lot of Winnebago's camper vans on the road, so it's good to see the tourists are coming back this year. It's already started, so it still hasn't recovered from the Rona. And those people are right, because I wouldn't stay at an Irish hotel now unless they could guarantee me that it was an actual tourist hotel, considering the government have turned them all into refugee camps. But and out of principle, it wouldn't be because of anything negative per se to say about these. To have with these, I'm sure many of them are these refugees are decent people who wouldn't bother you. But the thing is that they're hotels for tourism and our tourist industry. And when this country was poor, we had a booming tourist industry. And now that we have a woke government who doesn't seem to appreciate, they don't understand the natural beauty. I mean, you look at the Varadkar and Martin and all, they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand the beauty of this nation and the spiritual thing of it. So that was always sustained us, but now they've shot all over that by turning the hotels into refugee camps, and they've mocked an industry that has always served this country very well. This has always been a popular tourist destination, starting with people from England coming here in the old days, and then it became like Americans, Irish Americans, and regular Americans, and then everybody comes here now. It has been for decades. But yeah, that's worthwhile. So you're probably right to get yourself a camper van here now, and use that. So yeah, I'm definitely feeling a bit better, even though sleeping has been very weird and dreams have been very weird. But a lot of you have been reporting that too. There's been a fair bit of Ren fielding, and the kind of snide, passive aggressive Ren fielding. Oh, which reminds me, don't forget the weekend strength. Did it again. The Hocus Focus is on tonight at 8 p.m. on my channel Beyond Room 313. And it's a good one tonight. We had some pretty intense. Myself and Sarah had some pretty intense, heavy discussion on two of the topics. One of them went well into the world of hauntology, which was like I was really digging. But and Sarah came out with some fabulous, should we say, insights, words of wisdom. So watch that, and there's also a very interesting location report that's full of synchronicities. Jesus, again by our friends at Saturday Morning Seance. And so check that out tonight, 8 p.m. Irish UK time. But yeah, so Sandra Ray now. So oh yeah, well, something I want to talk about. We're going through this wave function thing. This change, and like what I went through yesterday is also part of it. It's also part of that. Pardon me, and sometimes it will feel like a psychic attack. When a person says to me, "I feel like I'm going under a psychic attack," the first question I'll ask them, "Are you absolutely sure it's a psychic attack?" I try to rule out anything like if they take, even if you take a lot of antihistamines and you stop taking them, you can actually go into it goes like you can have like the cold turkey thing almost. You can get on because some of those medications are really strong, and so no, no. So who do you think is attacking? Oh, I haven't got a clue. It could sometimes be a metamorphosis. You're actually getting to be a better person, and what you are is you're energetically the chrysalis in the pupa, waiting to emerge as the butterfly. And what you think is a psychic attack, especially in bed at night where you just feel like you're being microwaved or something, that could be a rejuvenation of yourself. That you're in the chrysalis. I often used to always think about that. In fact, I've been talking about this for years on these videos. Can you imagine the psychic experience, or whatever the experience is, for a larva to become a pupa into the pupa and then become a chrysalis, when it's in that transformation stage from like grub into a moth or a butterfly, could you imagine the magical forces that are happening inside the chrysalis? And that's why the chrysalis has become a kind of a powerful metaphor. Remember Chrysalis Records, the album company? A powerful metaphor for transformation in alchemy and stuff like that. And this whole thing of eating the bugs that the globalists want people doing. Have you noticed that so many of the bugs are larvae? It's like eat it and kill it now before it becomes a butterfly or becomes a moth or transforms. They want you eating the thing before it has gone through the chrysalis stage. I find that very spiritually interesting from a dark spiritual point of view on their behalf. Think about that one. It always seems to be larvae they want to eat. It's almost like, again, you see, because the establishment are by default pedophiles, everything is the destruction of the child. So when they eat a larvae that's not of a butterfly or a moth, it's a symbolic abortion. It's an ingestible abortion. The same, that's what that is. It kill them when they're young. Kill it all when it's young before it doesn't go through that. And the whole thing, if you know that thing of the Jesuits, give me a child at before age 7 and I'll give you the man. And that's to destroy their consciousness as their babies. Well, this is what the whole, non-Spania thing is about, and the, drag queen story time. They've taken, the globalists have taken the methods of the Jesuits, and instead of giving the young people an education or a mind devoted towards an educative path, they're putting them into, they're sexually distorting them and making them sexually confused. Give me the child before give me the boy before 7 and I'll give you the man. Well, now it is drag queen story time. Give me the boy before 7 and I'll give you the woman. Now, speaking of which, there was a restaurateur, and a French guy had a bistro somewhere down, or some kind of restaurant down in County Kerry, and I think he casually announced on social media that he wasn't going to put in a gender-neutral bathroom, because living in a restaurant, you're living from week to week. Restaurants don't make a lot of money unless you're some like Heston Blumenthal or someone with a big name like that. And even them guys, look at what's his name, that EJ that had all the TV shows in England. Can't remember the fucker's name. Jamie Oliver. His restaurants all failed, most of them. And so it's like Gary Rhodes' restaurants failed, and everyone liked him. And your man that screams at the food, Gordon Ramsay. It's hard to make money in the restaurant business. So anyway, this restaurant, I mean, you can make an okay living, but if costs are very, like when I was a teenager, I worked as my first job out of school, it was washing dishes, and in a restaurant, and at that young, my job was just to put you put that, wash the dishes and clean them, but you become very aware of how tight costs and cash flow are, even in a busy restaurant, because the restaurant manager would be down every day, because he used to have to walk by me and he'd say, "Hey, Thomas," and he'd be always carrying with him his clipboard. He'd always carry his clipboard with him, right? And he'd go into the storeroom, both the cold storeroom and into the dry storeroom, and he would be itemizing everything in that restaurant, because when it came to writing out purchase orders for anything, all the food and stuff they need, from the vegetable suppliers, the fruit suppliers, to the meat man that used to come around, and even he'd have to go out with this ledger, this clipboard, to the man that have the frozen meat in the truck, and he'd say, "I want this number of steaks, that number of kielbasa, that number of chickens," and it was tight. It was tight costings, and the amount of, this place was extremely busy, especially at lunchtime, flying, and You know, even with that, even with all these cash paying customers are coming in fact, they made most of their money on the wine and the beer, believe it or not. Anyway, so the this guy down in Kerry, he said on, I believe it was on social media or something. He said, "I can't afford, the restaurant business is going through a bad time anyway because post COVID, I cannot, and the tourist season hasn't kicked off. I cannot build a gender neutral bathroom." So what happens then? Well, of course, the wokey cult descends upon him, trying to destroy the man for just saying. And he also said, if any, he'll have a male bathroom and a female bathroom, and if he catches a man in a dress inside a female bathroom, he'll eject him. Well, of course he would, because the only reason a man in a dress wants to go into a female bathroom is to molest children. And to harass and torment and frighten, harvest energy off women. That's the only reason why a man in a frock goes into a female bathroom. And if you try to take that energy that energy harvesting or sexual molestation of children away from him, he makes videos on YouTube saying it's time to tool up, and don't, if anyone tries to stop me, they're going to learn about it. And that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a sexual pervert or an energy vampire of that extreme. If you try to take their energy off them, their feeding off them, they will revert to hysteria and violence. And so they reverted to hysteria on the internet. Well, guess what happened? He got thousands and thousands of bookings from people to say thank you. The key, everyone in County Kerry, all the sane people are all descending on his restaurant to give the man business because he stood up. Meanwhile, our governments and our politicians, our bureaucrats, continue to declare war upon the citizenry in the belief that the younger generation will buy the woke thing completely, that by the time it starts to cause any serious damage to the establishment, the young generation have already been indoctrinated in wokeism, the same way Adolf Hitler indoctrinated the German youth into Hitler youth, will be the demographic that will replace it anyway. So they're playing a game of gamble here. But guess what? Not all young people are going to become wokies. That's not going to. I know quite a few actually. In fact, I've met very few young people. Most of them shrug their shoulders with the woke stuff. I've met very few are pro-wokey. Most just shrug their shoulders. Um, so that it's an ideological war, absolutely, big time, declared upon us, by the way, by the establishment. At the same time, too, they they flood the countries full of immigrants because they believe, well, you know, the biggest inhibitor that Bolshevism has had to success in Europe is that Europeans love their countries. They love their cultures. They love their communities. They're proud and they celebrate it. And they've been doing it for thousands of years. Well, that's been a huge problem for both corporations and Bolshevik Marxists. Same thing, really. So what they want to do is to flood people from not from Europe into this part of the world who will have no. You know, it's just human trafficking at the end of the day by corporations and governments and by NGOs. Then it's not compassion or anything. It's using these people from the third world to flood them into Europe in the hope that they can build them up fast enough to overtake the traditional European demographics and get them to vote for them. But as we've seen from that tactic, the Democrats in the United States, that tactic doesn't work anymore. In the last election, the majority of Latinos voted for Trump, and Trump got the largest ever vote by African Americans of any president that wasn't a Democrat in the last election too. So these people assume, you see, do you notice the racism in this? That if we flood the country full of third worlders, they'll be so stupid they'll vote for us. That's literally what these liberals are thinking, these progressives are thinking. They're the biggest racists, always have been the biggest racists of all. And they're just using these people in the same way they used black people on their plantations. Same reason. Uh, Same reason. They're just the demographic we need right now. and then they call the rest of us racists. You couldn't make this stuff up. But anyway, that's, people are becoming wise to this. Now, what's beautiful about what happened in Ireland was that nobody picked on the immigrants. They were really the government. They know the government are behind it. We have a government that is so mediocre, and so, like, what did I ever say about the most wretched person on this earth? Is the most wretched, devious person on this earth is a weak man. The most wretched, devious government on this earth is a weak government, and boy, do we have a weak government. So we could literally be invaded by Russia because Irish politicians want Twitter likes. The other day, some future people before profit councillor who joined the Ukrainian mercenary groups and was killed out there somehow. We don't know the circumstances. He could have been a deserter shot by the Ukrainians for all we know. We just don't know the circumstances. And remember that many of the international brigade were shot as deserters. So why wouldn't this be? They're all they're heroes when they go there, fired up on the current thing. But when they get over there, they realise it's real shit. And they try to run back to Mammy, and they get shot by the people that they thought they were fighting for desertion. But so we don't know what his story is. But anyway, the government were praising his ass, a mercenary. Could you imagine that? Like, mercenaries are the lowest of the low, and the government were praising his ass. And the Russian embassy in Dublin said, you want to be very careful praising someone who attacked a Russian military. And then the Irish government go, we unequivocally stand by Ukraine. Well, let's see how that works out. Remember I told you years ago I had a dream of Eastern European troops on the streets of Dublin, and it was they weren't attacking me or anything, but others were attacking them. And I was just thinking to myself, if the Russians wanted to park a couple of aircraft carriers off our coast, our west coast, they could easily invade this country. The Irish Defence Force are too busy prancing around in high heels and waving rainbow flags. The rest of them are all dancing Jerusalem, so we can forget about anyone protecting us. The Russians could easily send in two carriers off the coast of Galway, bam, straight in with attack helicopters and jets. And before you know it, they'll be on the lawn at Phoenix Park, and we're invaded. And Micheál Martin and the rest of them will go, oh, they'll come in to protect us. But guess what? We're not members of NATO. So this law of you attack one, you attack them all, won't include us. We'll be on our own, and Russia has itself a handy little Atlantic base now. And at the same time, where's all the IT industry? Here. Where do all the fibre optic cables that carry the internet come from? Here. Snip, snip, snip. And there you are. And then that would turn into extreme violence. It could turn into, you would have, I'm going to fight the Russians types, instead of trying to understand why they invaded. And they will, and I'm not saying invasion will be right though, but I'm just saying but the reason why it'd be Twitter likes. Politicians would have led this country into war for Twitter likes. On social media, Twitter likes. So if that ever happens and one day my internet goes down and you're hearing news reports of Ireland and Russian tanks and ships and stuff here, remember the reason why it's happened is because the Irish government right now wanted Twitter likes. You always remember that. That's how mediocre. So while there's nothing more dangerous, not dangerous, deceiving, backstabbing, and vicious than a weak man, the same applies for weak governments. When I say dangerous, I don't necessarily mean they're dangerous to you directly, but they're actions that they can do. You've all worked with weasels on the office in the business. Weasels in the office who, when the boss was like making out that things aren't going well, the weasel would be the weasel would be the first one into the boss's office to squeal on people. We've all done it. To make sure don't fire me, and often the weasel gets fired himself. Because no boss wants a weasel, but they'll use them for what they can at the beginning. Same reason why governments, totalitarian governments will say, come forward and tell the government what you know. So the local losers go down to the local police station and they say, oh, he did this, she did that, he did this, she did that. They say, oh, thank you very much. Can you step outside, please? And then they shoot him because they know that the weasel and the coward man, the 20-faced cowardly weasel man who jump sides like that will do the same to them on the other side. So that's why I always say to people, if you're dealing with some kind of weasel who's talking shit constantly about other people, you can be guaranteed he's talking shit about you too. And at the same time, if I'm on social media and somebody comes onto my messages and says, Thomas, you want to watch this guy, and they mention some other figure in alt media who has a profile, and even if it's people I don't like, I immediately block the arsehole who comes onto my messages and warns me. Why? Because that kind of cunt will do it to me in a minute as well. I execute him by warning him, by blocking him on media. And that's the same thing. A weasel is a lecherous, despicable individual. A squealer is a lecher, because he will do it to others. He'll do it to you too. So you use them for what you can, and then that's government, totalitarian government. They do that. They use them for what they can, and then they take them outside and they liquidate them. And the same thing with in my private media. If somebody comes onto my wall and says, "Oh, you know your man that's like speaking at this event, blah blah, he's this or she's that," or I liquidate them with the block button. No response, because I know that same kind of weasel would do that to me in a minute. Oh, a lot of truthers are like that. They're spineless, despicable lowlives, most of them. Evil, actually, evil. And so always remember that in your workplace and everything. If some guy comes up to you and say, "Let me tell you about your man over there," what? Be certain that 5 minutes before, the turtle man walked over to the other one and said the same about you. That's what they're like. That's what they're like. You cannot have anything to do with them. They are despicable, and people do figure this out eventually. Because anyone, a weasel is a weasel is a weasel. A weasel is only in it for themselves. So that's what our government is at the moment. Weasels. They are weasels, and they could lead this country into war for that. And because they're weak, and they're frightened. They're anxious because they know they have a position of power, or they're on the street level in a certain job that they're not qualified for, or they're not adequate for, and the only way they can maintain their status or their stature is by being sycophantic to the power structure and playing one off the other at the lower level. So the Irish government, sycophantic to NATO, the Americans, Biden, the EU, Davos, Klaus Schwab. I'm sure your governments are the same too as well. At the same time, having the immigrants and the locals fight against each other. That's how they maintain. That's how mediocrity maintains power. And all you have to do is do the macrocosm, microcosm thing. Think of the job you were in. You had middle management bosses that were like really idiots. What did they do? They sucked up to the big bosses, and they caused chaos with the staff, the subordinates, and that's how they maintained their status. I wouldn't even call it power. I'd call it their position. So look after yourselves. Things are I'm feeling a lot better today. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Uh, you know, be grateful for the festival of light is here. The light is returned. Properly, the heat is coming back in. I smelt ozone last night like a thunderstorm it was quite humid yesterday. It was coming in, but we did rain a lot. But I didn't hear any thunder. But don't forget that Tua de Danann festival in Fermoy in Cork. It's looking fantastic. I'm going to be there doing a talk with John Waters, You know, check it out. I'm looking at the lineup is just getting more and more impressive, and more kind of beautiful. In a way, it's looking turn out to be a beautiful thing. It may even be the Woodstock of our time in Ireland. You know, in terms of its knock-on effect, in terms of changing people's perceptions and so on. But when it's on the land of it's on someone's private estate or something. So two of the down in Sorcha Creatives down in the end of the month in Fermoy. You can you have to reserve the tickets, I think, online. I'm not sure, but you look it up, and there's Hocus Focus tonight with myself and Sarah at 8 p.m. and it's a good one too. You'll like this. I really enjoyed the discussion on this one, and just enjoy life. Okay, sanguine gnosis. Love you all.